perspectives on conversion and Jewish tradition.
But you're going around telling everybody, like your parents and all these people, like my life in as an Orthodox Jew, blah 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 blah. And I thought that's misleading. You were never Orthodox Jew, not back then. That's how I see it.
Okay.
All right. We talked about this on the phone the other night. It's scary that you call Dennis Prager your Rebbe. That you call him your Rebbe. He's not a rabbi. He's not even a practicing Jew. He's a secular ignoramus who espouses heresy and follows a heretical offshoot from Judaism. You need to either pick Torah or Pragerism/Reform. But you're fooling yourself by claiming to be a Torah Jew while your Rebbe is unapologetically breaking Shabbos in public and participating in a heretical Reform temple. It boggles my mind how you can't see that, and I think your dependency on him needs intervention.
Okay.
I'm glad you find that funny.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. And you can show him me saying that. I don't have a problem with it. You quote someone saying in quotes, here's what they said. Unfortunately, Duke's chronic fatigue syndrome is acting up now, and he must crawl into bed and stare at the poster of Dennis Prager on his ceiling, dreaming of Dennis holding him in his arms and reading the Torah to him in perfect Hebrew. I laughed my ass off when I read that, and I first thought was, I could have written that. I could have written that. That was the funniest thing in the book. That is by far the funniest. I just ruined the book for everybody, because that is the funniest thing in the book. And I wouldn't have gotten it except for the fact that I know this guy now. Then I said to myself, it's interesting how your father was booted from the church, and you go into talking about that. And he was called a heretic, which I didn't know, because we talked about it. You brought his books out before.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't tell me this.
Mm-hmm.
I learned it from your book yesterday. I think I read this. And you followed in his footsteps by getting booted from Shuls.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And you have partnered with me, probably calls out heretics more than anyone you've ever met.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because people are heretics to me, to most of your friends are not considered. Right? So I call out heresy all the time. And it's almost as if you're seeking your father's approval by doing what he did, and I'm sure you want me to call you a heretic too, just so you can feel like your father. So knowing that about you, I highly doubt you will ever drop Prager and your heretical books that you quote for Torah talks, because for you it's like a badge of honor to be called a heretic. And that's my psychoanalysis for you. Okay, you write, and I quote, I'll be modern Orthodox. Orthodoxy 1 day a week, the Sabbath, and modern the other 6, unquote. So your definition of modern Orthodox is 1 day a week Jewish. I call that conservative. That is not modern Orthodox. Modern Orthodox is 7 days a week, okay? I don't know why you said that. I must respond to the following quote from your friend Chaim Amalek.
Okay.
Okay? It's a long quote. You ready?
Yeah.
He says, one of those...
This is the first email he ever sent me, so this is the beginning of a long, beautiful friendship with the guy is now probably my best friend in the world.
Okay.
And I got this in the summer of 1999.
The Lakewood Rav.
And he's someone who was raised Orthodox, but, left it in his college years. He's about my age.
One of these is the prohibition against Lashon Hora. He's saying that, you're doing some stuff that's not Torahic, right? Or evil speech. In other words, empty gossip. I do not care if you choose to honor the Sabbath or not. For whatever harm in your choice, it doesn't matter to anybody. And I do not give a damn if you choose to wear garments made of linen or wool or not. Did you know that the doing so is a sin, blah, 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 blah. But when you print unsubstantiated or pointless assertions of loathsome behavior, assertions that are inherently harmful to others, you are implicitly mocking the faith that you claim to embrace. If you cannot embrace this basic moral prohibition, why bother with the rest of Judaism? Wouldn't you be happier joining the rest of the secular herd and never look back, except perhaps to snicker? Your website, alas, provides all too many instances of Lashon Hora. What he's basically saying is, as long as you keep doing Lashon Hora on your website, don't even bother keeping Shabbos because it's a joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
That attitude is not the Torah attitude, and I gotta say something. It needs to be ignored. his attitude basically says you need to be 100% perfect or don't do any mitzvahs whatsoever. If you're not going to refrain from Lashon Hora, don't keep Shabbos. If you're not going to refrain from Lashon Hora, don't keep Shatnez. And you know what I'm saying? Do Shabbos, do Shatnez, do Kashrus. You still say Lashon Hora? We'll get to that later. Meanwhile, do mitzvahs that you can do. None of us are perfect. Nobody in this planet is perfect. So according to his silly logic, no Jew should ever do any mitzvahs. Because until you're perfect, you shouldn't do any. Because God forbid that you should be doing all these mitzvahs, but you're also still stinking up the house with this big transgression. And everybody sees your transgression. You make a mockery of the rest of it. Well, according to that, no one should ever do mitzvahs because no one's ever going to be perfect. There's always going to be an avera that somebody is doing. And therefore, you don't want to be caught with that avera. You should not do any mitzvahs. That is madness. That has nothing to do with Judaism. That's the opposite of Judaism. And maybe that's where you got your troubling attitude that bothered you so much when a Yid goes into McDonald's with a yarmulke. Remember we talked about that a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
You did not like a Jew going into McDonald's. You got so violent about it.
Yeah.
With a yarmulke.
I almost beat you up. I remember.
Yeah, it was terrible. You almost threw a Big Mac at me.
I did. Okay.
And it all goes together because I see the Jew. I say, look, at least he's wearing a yarmulke. At least he's wearing tzitzis. He's going and he's having a Big Mac. You're like, look what he's doing. This is terrible. Remember Greg Leake wrote it?
Yeah.
He goes, you know what? I don't give a fucking damn what the Jews do when they come into McDonald's. I really don't care.
Right.
But you were like, they're going, this is horrible and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think it all goes together from this Chaim Amalek letter that you got, and it played into your brain, and you freaked you out for life. And what I'm saying is, this guy doesn't even follow Torah. And this is the danger. Because you give this guy so much latitude, and you put him on a pedestal, you put Prager on a pedestal, and it's the three of you are in this sort of triumvirate of heresy. It's a triumvirate of heresy where you got this one guy who doesn't follow Torah, another guy, he's like a total heretic of Torah, he's like spews heresy out all the time, and you confuse them, and they're like your moral, influence to you, and it's wrong. And I think you need, what did I call it? Intervention. You got to get weaned off this stuff. And some of your thoughts are pathetic. All right. Same thing would apply with you. I said the healthier Torah. How did you know that we're getting to porn again? You saw that?
Yeah.
How did you reading on my shoulder? The healthier Torah had to just think at least we're saying, focus on positives, or in your case, until you give up porn. Because I know that you were beating yourself up in the book, like, I got to give up porn and everything. How can I do this? No, keep doing what you're doing. I love that you went to the porn sites, the studios or whatever, dressed like a Yid. Right? That part I had no problem with. It bothered me that whatever would come later after that. But okay. But I wanted to say, I bet you drove yourself nuts that you wore a yarmulke to those events.
Maybe, yeah.
I bet you would have felt more comfortable not wearing the yarmulke. And remember we talked about guilt from Casey's letter?
Mm-hmm.
Casey's questions?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like guilt. Guilt's a good motivator.
Yeah.
You go into a place like a porn convention and you're wearing a yarmulke and you feel sickened by it, you'll eventually stop going to the porn convention.
Yeah.
Right? But if you go in there without a yarmulke on, you're always going to keep going back. This yarmulke keeps you from doing some really bad shit.
Yeah.
I had a friend, this was like 25 years ago, and he was in Bell's. And he wasn't holding by a lot of the Torah. He was still wearing the uniform and the whole thing. And I was like, Don't you feel silly wearing like a whole uniform still? You're not really doing anything. Right. He goes, dude, if it wasn't for this hat, you know what I would be doing? Right. He said, this hat prevents me from getting all these hookers in Times Square.
Yeah.
Because he lived in New York.
Yeah.
He was like, I have this hat on.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy a hooker in Times Square because it disgusts me.
Yeah.
Okay? What would that animal be without the hat?
Yeah.